And there is no reason to believe that our personal human capacity would permit us to know everything about how every neuron fires and whatever, as well as what is happening in the far reaches of the universe.
Is there a chance that the very idea of an ultimate foundation to reality is a profound mistake? I.e., is it just a matter of language and, as you put it, closure? And to what extent are the physicists getting it wrong when they use this methodology to try and understand the world?
Well, I think the interesting thing is that many of the theoretical physicists, and perhaps Priya as well, do not imagine that somehow there's just one theory out there. They're very aware of the fact that you can hold the world in different ways. That was why Hawking said, gave up on the theory of, I mean, he made his career with the idea of theory of everything. So it's a huge shift for him to accept the notion that we operate within models and we can't find a way to escape those models to catch sight of how things are ultimately. So I think in some sense, a lot of theoretical physics is well ahead of the rest of culture in this respect. They are often very open to thinking what might be the case and to realize that all of the characteristics, all of the ways in which we describe things like particles and force, all of the things we assume are straightforward, well, once you look at it, particles cease to be particles. They're not this particular thing. And so I don't think it's a mistake, but it's a different way of thinking what you're up to.
Good. Well, just before I bring Priya in on this, I just want to be clear though, like with some scientific views, let's say like the theory of evolution, you're going to say there are more reasonable closures than others. It's not just a matter of closing up and reaching these theories. You want to say that there is something about these one closure that makes it, I say, more palatable than another.
Well,
according to the methodology or something.
That's an attempt to try and bring the truth of the world back into that's why it works. Well, I would think we have models which are very effective and they enable us to do things. We can, with our gene theory, we can develop ways of intervening and explain stuff. But I don't think they have somehow caught sight of some underlying truth of the world, right. And we don't need that truth in order to account for why it's successful. I use the example of the Aristotelian Ptolemaic view of the world. It was able to predict the positions of the planets incredibly accurately for 2,000 years, so accurately that when Copernicus put forward his view, he didn't even think that it was more accurate. He just assumed that Ptolemy's tables were right. And we now think that that idea was just completely ridiculous, didn't we? We think that each additional celestial sphere that he added to his story was compounding a mistake. But I suspect that in some future generations, there will be people who look back on our account of the world in terms of, Big Bang and inflation and dark energy and dark matter and so forth. Oh, that was obviously totally ridiculous.
Yeah. And we'll never reach that point where someone goes, no, they got it right.
Yeah, right? And wouldn't it be miserable if it did? I mean, we sort of know the world is unknowable, don't we? I mean, if we imagine that, we've cracked it, do we close down all of our universities? It's all over now, we don't have to do any more?
Well, let's see what Priya thinks of that. I'm really interested, particularly on this point of there's nothing out there that could tell us that the theory of evolution is true or something. There's no way of checking and going tick, we've got that one, it's sorted. We don't need to keep on working.
Right, I think that we have a way in which we are able to, we have a set of criteria within science to rank order explanations and explanatory power. So I'm not talking about truth, capital T. I'm just talking about, as an explanation, if we want an explanation for how the solar system works, we now know that the Ptolemaic Aristotelian one is not an elegant explanation because it does no longer is consistent with many other observations that we have made, since Ptolemy's time, that they did not have the capacity to make them. They didn't have the instruments, they didn't have the ideas, right, to make them. But we have a way of preferring one explanation. And the criteria depend on the particular field. So, physicists have often invoked the idea of simplicity or beauty or symmetry as criteria, or economy of explanatory power. So I think that while we may not be getting to what ultimate truth T is, capital T is, I think we are definitely moving along in terms of, I'm very careful and I'm not using the word progress necessarily because that word is laden, but that we are definitely have theories that have more explanatory power today. And sure, everything that we know is provisional and conditional to the moment. And so when we have better data, better instruments to interact with the world and to make measurements, then we may have a more refined explanation, or perhaps a brand new explanation in some cases. But I think that there is definitely a direction in terms of more explanatory power that we are moving along. Whether we reach the ultimate point of explaining everything, I think that is a philosophical position that people take. I mean, I personally think that it is quite possible that not everything is knowable. And that is because I am very much placing us as the observers who are doing the knowing, the probing and the knowing, and there is no reason to believe that our personal human capacity would permit us to know everything about how every neuron fires and whatever, as well as what is happening in the far reaches of the universe. There's no reason to believe that. And of course, then the question is, can there be other forms of augmented intelligence then that's an open question. I don't know what those intelligences have the capacity for.
I worry that Donald might agree with you both on some of these points as well, but let's see. Donald, does it even make sense to be thinking of the world as lacking an ultimate foundation or something that we can never know?
Well, I think that, again, we should pursue scientific explanations as far as we can, but I think that the very nature of scientific explanation entails that our theories, every theory in science has a necessarily limited scope.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we have, so that means that, again, as I mentioned, there's infinite job security here. There's no way that we can say that we're getting closer to the ultimate theory because you always have your assumptions. So to be very concrete, Einstein's theory of space-time, it's a fantastic theory. But his theory also gives us the mathematics to find the very limits of space-time. And it's 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, 10 to the minus 43 seconds. Space-time ceases to have any operational meaning. And as a result, recently the European Research Council announced a 10 million euro project, Universe Plus project. And what they're looking for are new foundations for physics beyond space-time and quantum theory. So they recently in February had a meeting of over 100 mathematicians and theoretical physicists. And what they're doing is saying, we need to think entirely outside of the space-time box, entirely outside of space-time. And the reason they're going for this is they are finding new structures called positive geometries and combinatorial objects like decorated permutations. So in the last 10, 11 years, the high energy theoretical physicists have found structures like the amplituhedron, cosmological polytopes, associahedron. These are structures not inside space-time, but utterly beyond space-time. And they succeed in making predictions inside space-time that are very, very precise, that reveal new symmetries, for example, in scattering processes, and make the computations much, much simpler. So science has made an incredible move just in the last decade. All of our scientific theories have been inside space-time, and in the last decade, we have systematically started to move outside of space-time. So that tells you how stunning this is. I mean, we usually think of we're going to get a theory of everything inside space-time, but now we're going entirely outside of space-time. Now all we found are these positive geometries, right? We haven't found a dynamics. These are just positive geometries. They're like, it's 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the The obelisk is sitting there, and all the apes are pounding and hooting and hollering. They know it's really, really significant, but they don't know what it means. Well, we're sort of like that right now. We've stepped outside of space-time just in the last decade. We found these positive geometries, and they're just sitting there, and we need to find out what do they mean. So.
Donald, just to jump in here, some of the stuff you're speaking about goes over my pay grade, but luckily I've got Priya next to me who might be able to shed some light on it. What do you make of this, Priya?
Well, I mean, I think my approach is a fundamentally different one. I think the way to transcend our current bounds of theoretical knowledge is not by thinking that we'll start somewhere ab initio, but rather pushing the theories that we currently have to the points where they break, looking for anomalies and gaps with data and our theoretical frameworks, which are limited. We know they are limited. Yes, I agree with Donald that they are limited. But then when you have new pieces of data that completely contradict or bring into tension our current conceptions and models, I think that those are the powerful places, those gaps and anomalies are the powerful places where we not only get reminded of the limits of our current frameworks, but also they point to the new directions in which we ought to go. I much prefer that empiricism-driven, data-driven kind of disruption of current frames, fundamental frames of thinking about the physical universe.
Before we go to Donald for his response, I heard an agreeable from you there, Hilary.
Well, I think I was slightly surprised, Donald, by the rhetoric you used in that account, because it sounded as if it's very like you're suggesting, oh, well, you're stumbling on a new theory that's true as an alternative to space-time. Well, actually, space-time is a bit of a mistake. Actually, we've discovered all of these new stuff. And surely, instead, we should be thinking, well, rather, as Priya was saying, we've got a space-time story. It's got sort of issues about how we combine Einstein's general relativity theory and quantum mechanics, of course, a classic sort of issue. But we want to explore those and see what we can do that with the ways where we see we've got problems. And if you want to propose a radically different account, and it sounds, I don't fully understand the account you were giving, but if you want to propose a radically different account, yeah, I think we should be up for looking at radically different closures, but we shouldn't imagine that they're somehow miraculously going to have discovered the truth. They're just another way of closing the world, and everything is about, well, are they more effective? And it's pretty damn hard coming up with a radically new one, because we've had a few hundred years to build the current one, so it's pretty difficult getting that off the ground.
So, Donald, it seems like you've got three maybe connected points to come back on there. The first seems to be, you're being too hasty. Should we not use our current theories and to the point of breaking point? Is that not the right methodology to follow? The second is whether you're sneaking in realism without perhaps justifying it. And thirdly is whether or not you agree with the sort of empirical method that's being advocated by Priya and Hilary to the same extent.
Well, I'm afraid I agree with them both quite strongly, so I'll So I absolutely agree with Priya that we need to have our science, physics in particular, based on empirical data, and we should push our current theories to their limits and explore them experimentally as far as we go. And that's what led to the positive geometries, right? It was looking at scattering data from like Large Hadron Collider and so forth, and trying to compute with space-time quantum field theoretic calculations the scattering amplitudes for various 2 gluons smashing into each other and 6 gluons spraying out. It was looking at that Ed Witten and his team in early 2000s discovered what are called the BCFW recursion relations. And so it was our existing physical theories and experiments that led Witten to this mathematics. And then when they looked at what Witten and his postdocs had done, they discovered that it seemed to be that these new equations, which made the calculations much, much simpler, were pointing to some kind of geometry And then eventually in 2013, 2014, Nimar Kani-Hamed and Yaroslav Trinka found a geometry that sort of captured what Witten's equations were doing. So I agree with Priya that it has to be driven by empirical data. And what was remarkable was the scattering data that led to the discovery of these positive geometries. And one payoff was, if you do the calculations in space-time, you get hundreds of pages of algebra that turn into maybe 3 or 4 terms in these new geometries. Now, to Hilary, I'd say I absolutely agree that these new positive geometries are not the truth. They're just the next step in the ever-ending sequence of experiment theories that we're going to come up with. So I completely agree that if it sounded like I was saying, oh, we've discovered the truth, absolutely not. We've just discovered the next baby step outside of space-time. But what was remarkable to me, though, is most of us wouldn't imagine that we could step outside of space-time. And I'm saying physics is now fundamentally stepping outside of space-time, at least in this Universe Plus project.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.